Hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. You're good on my end as well.
Awesome, man. Awesome. It's been a while, dude. How you been?
I've been well. And yourself? How you guys holding up out there?
We're doing all right. We're not we're in pretty much the worst part of the country or one of the worst parts. So we're kind of hoping some normalcy comes sooner rather than later. What about you? It looks like you're in the office right
I am in the office. Fortunately, we've got a big building, so it allows for me to come in, get some work done a couple days of the week where I have all my resources. It's printers and copiers and the likes of. Plus, it's just nice to get out of the house.
now.
We have because we've been deemed essential business here in Oregon. We've got we've got a situation where we can come in and actually get some work done. So our factory is, although it's been pared down, we've got a skeleton crew out there because we only need what we need. And obviously with retail shut down, there aren't a whole lot of orders going out the door. But we are building products, a lot of custom bats, and then some products that we have some launch dates coming up for that are keeping part of our staff busy and just getting after it.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Everybody in your family safe, healthy during this time?
Everybody's good. Thanks for asking. And yours?
Yes, everybody's good and yeah, just I think we're all looking for some sort of normalcy. So I appreciate you hopping on. I think this is great because you could tell the story. I think nobody knows DeMerny better than you. You've been at DeMerny how long
It'll be officially, I think, from a official hire date, it's about 28 years. But even a couple of years prior to that, when Ray first started the company, I was helping him out, in kind of a volunteer role as a player. Ray was a player. So as you know, in the world of slow pitch, giving a kid a few bats goes a long ways, And so he paid me with metal back in the days, the early days.
now?
So
That's
yes,
awesome. Why don't we start with your early career, like your childhood? Was it always baseball, softball? Did you always take to that sport? And kind of did you play growing up baseball? Did you then play in college? And then when did you switch over to the softball side of things?
yeah,
Let's talk about
yeah.
that.
I was always a baseball player. It was just something that was, baseball is kind of a legacy sport. If you've got some people from the generations before you that'll sit you down and teach you the game, and you develop an interest early on, it kind of sticks with you over your life. So I had parents, grandparents that I'd get out to games, even just the high school games. That was a big deal when you're a little guy. You've got these high school, and those games were all over the place. So we were always at high school games and then college games, and occasionally a pro game. Portland didn't have an MLB team, still doesn't. We had a good minor league team. And we get out to those games once in a while, but just an early access to the sport, just as a spectator, just gave me a passion for it. I boxed a little bit as a real little guy. I jumped into that sport. That was more because I got in a couple of scraps at school, and my mom was like, "Okay, well, if you like to punch, then let's take you down here." And then, of course, you get your face punched in for a while because that's a different deal when you jump into guys and don't really know how to do it. But that was kind of a passion in early years. And then, yeah, through high school, a little college ball. And then I jumped into slow pitch when I met Ray. And I looked a little different than a lot of slow pitch players around here. I was still lean and fast. Slow pitch in the late 80s, early 90s was a really big guy sport. And at 6'6", 275 now, I'm not small, but I didn't carry this kind of size, back then. I was more like 230, 240. So an outfielder running around, big arm, couldn't hit a slow pitch, ball to save my life. I just didn't have the timing down. And as that was something actually Ray worked with me on. He saw me as a pickup player for a church league team. So I was working with a guy, had to take a sabbatical, a couple months. He was going overseas. He asked me if I'd backfill his position on a church league team. And wasn't a church that I attended, but just my temperament and just kind of the way I handle myself. He knew I'd be a good fill-in. So I went out, met the guys. It was a good fit from a personality standpoint. And they just accepted me for who I was as the offensive player. Defensively, I was doing some things that most guys in that league weren't doing. Offensively, I was probably hitting, the Mendoza line or a little less. And so couple weeks in, I kind of figured some things out, and lo and behold, Ray DeMarini and his team were kind of in the wings because the commercial league played after us on the same field, and Ray kind of saw this new face and big body, out there trying to figure the game out. So he pulled me aside afterwards. Hey, kid, where are you from? Well, I'm right here. I live in Portland. I'm born and raised. And he was like, man, I've never seen you. I said, because this is like my third week ever playing, sir. And he was like, really? And he's like, you think you're any good at this? And I said, I have no idea what good even is. He goes, why don't you stick around and watch us play afterwards? I think you might enjoy this level of play that we play. And I said, okay. So I stuck around. I was like, oh, I got this. Just a competitor in me. I was like, I can do this. Well, you go out there, it's kind of a who's list of local slow pitch players from that day. And it's automatically just right out of the chute. It's just an ego deal, right? Anytime you're dealing with an upper echelon of a sport, and I didn't quite have swagger in slow pitch back then. So I looked a little green. They worked with me. A month or two later, he's asking me to play for a travel ball team. The rest is history. What became, about a decade of just a mentor, father figure, employer relationship set me up, for a long career in this business. So it's been fun.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So we could develop a lot of different topics out of that kind of background story. So anybody that knows that name, Ray DeMarini, obviously, kind of comes knowing that DeMarini Sports, like when you met Ray DeMarini, what year was this? And was DeMarini Sports even established, or was he even talking about, hey, I'm going to make my own bats? And you're like, dude, who is this guy? This guy's talking about making his own bats and stuff like that. Was that something that was a conversation between you two?
Yeah, absolutely. When I met Ray at that particular night, he had a bag full of his bats, and it was 1989. So it was the first year. It was the Ray DeMarini Super Performance bat. It wasn't Ultimate Weapon until year 2. So 1990 was technically the first year Ultimate Weapon. There was wasn't called Conference back then, but it was called the Power Tour, and it was basically a lot of the same spots in the country where they strung together about a 16 event tour. And the upper division, aspiring B, A, double A, major, super major, they kind of had that level of play back then. You'd meet up. It was the Richest Superiors and the Belcours and the Williamsworth and Lighthouse and Steels. I mean, it was, kind of the heyday of kind of the prime of slow pitch for that era anyway. And Ray was working. I didn't know this person at the time, but Larry Neff, was on Richest Superior. He was a utility player, and he lived here in Portland. Ray had befriended him on the softball fields, and Larry actually introduced Ray to that level of play. So as Ray went out and took a look at what these open division, major division players were using it for equipment, which were custom inloads, custom knobs, custom diameter handles, weight and balance points kind of moved up and down the bat depending on what they liked. Ray was like, well, what better person to introduce this level of product to than your everyday league night guy, and lower level player. Those are the guys that really need, the help. You give a guy a bat and he can hit it 350 feet, and with a bat that's all tuned up for his liking, he can hit it another 50, 100 feet. It's fine. The fences are only 300, 325. But you give a guy a bat that he can gain a 10% in performance, and he's a warning track power guy, well, that's a game changer for him. And Ray kind of fit that demographic, right? So he was basically making a bat for himself, knowing that he appealed, his level of play was going to be more appealing to the masses.
That's so it was custom way back when, it seems like, for Ray DeMarini. He was a little bit maybe before his time, where he was coming out with these custom bats. So anybody that, we'll get to kind of how you came on board, but anybody that obviously, like, how would you describe Ray DeMarini? It seems like when I look up pictures, I mean, it seems like you could probably squeeze his neck with just one of you're a big dude, and he seemed like he was like a littler dude. Like, how describe Ray DeMarini for somebody that doesn't know him? What type of guy was he? And just, it seems like he was a very caring, loving guy. How would you describe him?
Yeah, Ray was many things to many people, but at his core, he was a very compassionate and passionate person. I mean, he cared about his people. I mean, he ran this place like it was a family, right? I mean, even our bonuses in our early year was Ray walking around with cash and just ripping you off a few $100 bills and just saying, thanks for being on my team. So it was really kind of, Ray was very Italian. And if I had to describe Ray a long time ago in an interview, I said, if Jack LaLanne and who is it, Joe Pesci made a person, it was Ray DeMarini, right? He was like this fitness guru. Ray worked out, trained local NFL players for the combine. I mean, he was a huge football guy. Just loved the science of sport, right? And how do you get better? And then you put him on a field, and he was super competitive, right? And loved athletes and just developing athletes. Took his business very seriously, was very aware, even for a guy that wasn't necessarily schooled in business, was very business savvy. Ray was very much an entrepreneur, would recognize trends very early, right? And then kind of put us on a course, path to have success. And that's really DeMarini in a nutshell, is just recognizing what the next trend is going to be, and then working hard and fast in order to try to accomplish, a product to meet that demand. Even though it may not even be a real demand, he just, was able to have that foresight to kind of take a look out at what players might want to have in the bag. And so, great guy. He was, from a personal standpoint, helped me a ton in my career as a mentor, and just kind of helping me navigate the crazy world of sporting goods, equipment.
That's awesome. Anybody watching this or listening to this down the road and they don't know who Ray DeMarini is, I believe that you could look that up. You can find the YouTube video from like ESPN. I don't know what year that was. I'm sure you know off the top of your head what year he came on ESPN and was doing that softball type of schooling. Do you know what year that was he did that?
Yeah, that was actually the very first video that he was in. He was casted to be in as talent for a local production that was going to go into the ESPN sports training library. And so it's funny when I look at that video, there's no DeMarini product in it because DeMarini hadn't existed yet. It was like 88, but then, and that was called actually Top Spin Heat, I think is what that video was called. It's in the ESPN library. And then the Secrets to Ultimate Bat Speed came out in 93, 94. That's the one people are probably a little more familiar with.
Yeah.
And that was, we shot that down in Sacramento. It was the shoot kind of worked around a spring training we had for a major division team we had back then, AA major. And so guys like Larry Carter and Mikey Rodriguez. There was a lot of guys that were Midwest to West Coast players that we traveled around the country, played on that circuit. Ray used us as a cast, basically, and shot this video that is still floating around out there. I think we've been using parts of that video over the last few months as part of our social media content. So it's fun.
That's awesome. And Larry Carter's a name that some people might recognize. He's got his own DeMarini bat, so people might recognize that Larry Carter name is still out there today. So I want to know your story. I want to know the Jerry Garnett story. When do you come on board? And I'm hearing rumors Jerry Garnett is the second employee to DeMarini. He's the third employee. What number employee are you? Are you number 2 or are you number 3?
Yeah, it depends on how you take a look at no later than 3.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
But there were a couple of people that were hired in front of me technically, but whether or not they were employees or they were contract, employees, it's so long ago that who knows. But yeah, the first group that got brought on board, I was fortunate to be a part of that. And it's been a long time, man. It's been a long time, but it's gone so fast, and just kind of, sometimes I take part on interviews like this where actually I have to give some time and just reflect on how long ago that was, and just everything that's gone on, that just the hurdles that you just have to jump through to stay in this, to stay in this business are immense. There's just competition all the time. And we've been able to, to push our way through it. So it's been a fun ride, but yeah, a long time.
Is there any things early on that you can pinpoint to DeMarini's success? Like a bat came on board, a College World Series moment. What was kind of the moment that you could say DeMarini bursted on the scene, the national scene?
Yeah, well, genre specific slow pitch, we'd have to go back to the double wall
Mm.
technology of 93 when we launched that. I was fortunate to be able to use that, early, developing it with Ray. We'd go out to ball fields. We went through many revisions of that double wall design. And then when we felt like we had a competitive design that was compliant with the rules of the day, of course, we didn't have performance standards back then, but there was official, softball bat specs to be met. Took it up to one of the circuit events. One was up in the Seattle area, just south of Seattle, and hit it in a home run derby. And I'm in there with, some of the best players in the game as a no-name player, young guy. And I'm going deep into this home run derby, and they're looking at me sideways like, that's not right, with that guy swinging. Because it made a different sound. And just prior to that, titanium bats had been banned.
Yes.
And so there was titanium bats that had come out. Our bat was very unique in its sound, and if it sounded like anything, it probably sounded closer to the titanium bats that got banned. So when you take a look at this performance and the sound, they're thinking that we actually had a titanium bat out there on the field, and it wasn't long after that the bat was banned. Unfortunately, so associations of that time, they didn't have the labs and some of the things we have now to fact check, performance and materials. So we got in this situation where our competitors were basically speaking on our behalf as far as what our material was on our bats. And we had a short period where the bat was banned. It got reinstated, but that exposure and just that exposure gave us just immense, just instant overnight recognition as a product, which you couldn't have paid for that. We definitely couldn't have at that time. The marketing exposure that came out of that whole incident basically put us on the map. And so 93 was a big year. You fast forward it to later on in that decade when Wilson Sporting Goods, came knocking with a half a dozen other suitors. And Ray and Mike really felt like they had taken the business about as far as they could as entrepreneurs. I mean, you're getting to where you're $12, $14 million business now. It's a decent sized business for a couple of guys that, again, aren't, they're not businessmen at heart, right? Mike Egeman was an engineer. Ray DeMarini was a manager. They both worked for Freightliner prior to this bat business. And so that was their world. Capable, smart guys. But in order for the business to, really sustain, they needed help. So we, at the end of about a year-long period, Wilson Sporting Goods became our new owner, and it was one of the best things that Ray and Mike could have done as far as put us in those hands, because for 20 years now, we've had nothing but opportunities to grow the business, both from just an infrastructure, the building that they've left here in Oregon when a lot of other companies have gone overseas. They really appreciate, this, being made here in the U.S. Now, we will use at times components from overseas vendors, but we are designed and manufactured, assembled here in the States. And there's only a few of us that are still doing that. We're proud of that. So that was a huge time.
Was that one of the? There's like a rumor that I've heard that was one of the things that when Ray was going to obviously sell to Wilson, was that one of part of the rules that it had to still be assembled and manufactured in the U.S.? Yeah,
that was important to us. I mean, because you need a safe landing and a soft landing for your people, right? So he was a big people guy, and we had 20, 30 people at the time that, you're going to be displaced, right? I imagine zero would have made the transition over to Asia, right, in any capacity. And so and there are people that do. Sometimes they move overseas and run a business, but that was not going to be the case here. Ray wanted to make sure we were all in good shape. So that was a huge time frame. And shortly after that, we got into the whole two-piece design, which allowed for us to, have the benefits of composites and alloys in one bat. The weight savings by eliminating weight through the taper in the handle area by using an aluminum bat. We could replace that with composites, save that weight, and then put that weight in different parts of the barrel. So if we wanted more end-loaded, we could really get end-loaded because we had weight that we could play with. And if we wanted things that were more balanced, we could pull that down in the hands. And it gave us a lot of flexibility in way of design. And it also gave us a little bit of flex in actually the way the bat performed, which was a big tagline that we used early on in our two-piece baseball bat era, where we call it the bat that bends. And it was kind of this story that we were working with that, almost like a golf club, you swing back and it creates this, energy. You get that energy back with regards to better performance at ball strike. And then we just took off from there, and we started designing all kinds of two-piece design bats. That was huge. And then in more recent years, our innovation on the composite side, and just Wilson and our parent company, Amer's, commitment to investing in this facilities to give us a state-of-the-art composite lab, the composite expertise we have. We have former people from aerospace, just really smart people when it comes to composites and resin systems that we're looking at, the design process and what can we do? How much is too much, right? What are the real points of emphasis that, we're working towards on a daily basis? We always want to be mindful that a particular product should never be bigger than the game, but really it should be something that allows for the player to feel like it's an extension of their body. It's perfect when you're wearing a glove or swinging a bat, or you're wearing a pair of spikes, and you don't even have to think about it, right? It's there, and you're connected with it from a feel, fit, and performance standpoint. And we were big into that early on, and it still are to this day.
That's awesome, man. A lot of people probably getting a lot of good stuff out of what you're saying right now. And definitely, I think going back, anybody that's, around that, 40, 50 years of age, probably remembering like a remember when type thing, like where were they when the first two-piece bat came out? And what was the feedback from DeMarini's first two-piece bat? Were people weirded out about it, or were people ready for it because other manufacturers were dabbling into this two-piece design?
Yeah, no, it was right out of the chute, we had success with it, and it was on a baseball bat, Beezer at the time, and it was something that it was like, well, wow, what is this thing? I mean, it was hard for people to get their head around because baseball players in general are pretty traditional, right? And the feel that typically comes from a bat is one that it'll tell you if you miss the barrel or the sweet spot, right? There's a lot of feedback from just an energy standpoint that, the younger kids, I mean, they step out of the box and they're kind of squeezing their hands. You got the whole bees in the hands type of deal. But even the older guys, they don't appreciate you. You start getting relative speeds that are up 180 miles an hour plus, and you mishit a bat, it lets you know. And so one of the things we were trying to do with that two-piece design was see if we couldn't eliminate some of that just discomfort or pain that's associated with balls that are frequently not hit on the sweet spot, right? As a former pitcher and pitching coach, I'm teaching guys how to break bats, right? and then along comes, the aluminum bat era, and the bats don't necessarily break, but when you hit those areas on the taper or out towards the end, you know it. And so automatically there was just a welcome from a consumer standpoint on a bat that was just more comfortable to hit with.
And DeMarini also, like the names too, like what type of process is that? Like, we're going to call this bat the Vexum. We're going to call this bat the Voodoo. We're going to call this bat the Juggernaut. Like, where are they kind of, it just seems like DeMarini's like creative thought process on naming these bats is just very outside the box. And also the design feature too. Is that also about DeMarini being a little bit different, like kind of like with the skulls on the bat and stuff like that? Was it always going to be one of those things like, hey, we're going to be that kind of badass brand? Is that kind of what DeMarini is and always was?
Yeah, from day one, and that had to do with our leadership. And, in the marketing world, they call it outlaw brands. And so we were going to be the outlaw brand, a little dark, a little in your face, very direct. Our creative folks were given a lot of latitude to just get it done and make it cool, right? And so their inspiration for a lot of what shows up on product comes from many different areas, and very few of them, if any, come from the sporting goods sector. They're looking at, things that are trending in different industries, shoes, video games, just things trying to make a connection with a youth player in particular, which is the bulk of our business across the baseball and fast pitch genres. But even on the slow pitch side, you take a look at slow pitch players, they want to have fun too, right? They want things to look cool too. Performance is always king, and we're mindful of that performance first. But after that comes a real commitment to making sure that we're no lower on the depth chart than we ever want to be, which is number one when it comes to the way something looks and sound. I mean, it's very sensory. When you take a look at a bat or a product like bats, you're trying to appeal many senses. I mean, there's the visual part and the performance, or the ball coming off the bat, and that eye test that you quickly ascertain as a player. And then there's the sound. How does this thing sound? How does it feel? How does it look? I mean, those are important to a ball player. So we're looking always to see what's trending in different areas and how much of that can we realistically pull over to the bat.
Yeah, there's bats like nowadays, like the Goods bat from DeMarini, the BB Core bat. It just looks like, very simple. It's like got that all black design to it with the gold writing, but it just looks like just a badass bat. It just looks very DeMarini-esque. So a lot of the bats, like you could just tell like it's a DeMarini bat just by the way it looks. So has it been difficult in times when like rules changes, like where like, for example, BSR, they go from BSR to BB Core, when it goes from the youth model to the USA baseball? Has that been a struggle for DeMarini, or because of a Wilson Sporting Goods, it's eased the pain of kind of that?
Yeah, I think the hurdles that we had to overcome, challenges that we overcome in early years, set us up well as a company and as a brand to be able to deal with adversity. I mean, and that's really when you're good, and this isn't necessarily tooting our own horn, but when you're good, you shine in those moments. And we've seemed to always be able to have success when, as the rules became more stringent. And we're big proponents of performance standards. I'm still on the field. So at any given weekend, when I'm playing at the upper divisions of what they call senior softball, I'm in my 50s now, so I'm not necessarily a senior, but I play with my own age group. I play with younger kids. So you've got balls that are being hit at you 100 miles an hour plus. I play third base. They call it the hot corner for a reason. And I never ever want to be personally, let alone for the many of youth players or adult players that we service, I never want to see the speed of the game exceed the level of ability on the field. That's important to me. I've coached kids over the years. I coach pitching. I've got a son who's still a college pitcher, and you always want a player on the defense to have a chance of fielding the ball perfectly. I mean, but you want to be able to have fun on the offensive side as well. So there's this real delicate balance. So the rules that have been put together by some very sharp people out there in our industry take into account all of this from a scientific standpoint. And we're huge on that. So that is more of a hurdle that others have had to get over. And we have our challenges as well, but I think we've navigated that well over the years.
And what would you say to anybody that says, hey, we should go to all wood standard? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, for slow pitch or baseball or all the above?
For both, yeah, slow pitch, all the above, everything on the table.
Yeah, it has its place. I mean, and obviously the wood is a very big part of the game, professional game. In a lot of cases, you're talking about men and women at the professional levels of diamond sports that have put a lot of time into developing themselves as a player. So giving them a product that's really made more for an amateur, it's not a good fit. That's when the ballparks aren't big enough, the bases aren't far enough apart, and then you've got everything that happens statistically, and you'd have an asterisk, if you are going to ever allow for non-wood products to be in a professional rank. So I think wood is a real good place there. When it comes to development, it's good for the reasons that I mentioned earlier with regards to being able to feel where a ball is up and down the barrel of the bat a little better than maybe if you're using non-wood products. So paint is a good teacher, and it's you miss hit with a wood bat and it, in baseball. Slow pitch, it's interesting because we run into pockets throughout the country where wood is played. And I think that there's a lot of things that go on from just a local government association standpoint, the people that govern these sports, they run into, issues that they just don't want in their areas, whether it's illegal bats or the likes of. And so a good way to eliminate that is just say, we're not going to allow for those products to be on the field that can be altered. You're not going to really alter a wood bat. There's not much you can do to it to gain performance. Not really. And so, yeah, we have a bat in our line. It's called the Corn Dog.
Corn Dog.
Yeah, we developed, myself and one of our engineers about a dozen years ago, we started out with a wood wrap composite core bat that was going to be no better than wood bats, but just would hold up better on the field, making it ultimately a more affordable product. And we're proud of that bat. We sell a lot of them. We sell them in a lot of areas. We sell a lot up your way, Pennsylvania, and some areas where they have a lot of wood bats. And we a little back and forth early years on what that bat was and what it meant, and a little pushback from some of the associations on whether they would allow it or not. But as we were able to sit down with them and talk to them about what the bat was, it represented, and the intent, they were like, okay, we can get our head around that. You end up sending, half a dozen bats out to a league. They test them, and it's like, all right, run production didn't change, home runs didn't soar, and now we've got bats that, we can buy them as an organization and have bat-provided leagues with products that we won't have to replace for a long time. So that was really appealing from just a budgetary standpoint for them. So I don't think that there's, one is better than the other, and God forbid if the speed of the game ever gets to a point where, associations start making decisions on whether or not they should go back to wood. I think that would ultimately hurt the sport, speaking in terms of slow pitch in particular, because at the end of the day, we're just playing this to have fun, right? You want to forget about life and the stresses of it. You want to go out and you want to hit a bomb once in a while. And what I can tell you is it's really difficult, the dimensions for these fields that are out there to hit home runs with bats. And it's not meant to, to be a performance game, more of a participant game. And I think we'd be going backwards if we did that. So knock on wood, that won't happen.
That's a great answer, man. It's a great answer. Also, have you found the shift in slow pitch? Has it been mostly obviously ASA/USA softball? USA is going to be the new one going forward. Or have you seen a shift more towards USSSA softball, or is it kind of still 50-50?
It's a good mix. I mean, I think both organizations have done a nice job. What I will tell you, at least in a lot of the areas out here in the West, is USSSA represents more tournament play, and USA softball represents more of the league play. And but for both are important, right? In terms of playing, not everybody's a tournament player, has the time on the weekends or ability to get to these places, and so just playing a couple nights a week or a few nights a week with your buds, is as good as it gets for a lot of those people. So there's room for both. From a performance standpoint, although they've taken two different paths with regards to the ball type in a lot of areas, you've got the 52-300 or thereabouts for USA softball, and then a little harder core compression for USSSA. That's more of a preference deal when it comes to players. And then, of course, we design nonlinear bats, the gap ball bats that really manage the performance of a softer compression ball a little better. And so people kind of plug in sometimes at the association they want to play based on what equipment is allowed as well, right? But at the end of the day, I think both of them are healthy. They're doing a nice job in their respective areas.
And if you could go back into the time bank and you could kind of think about what are some of your favorite DeMarini bats for slow pitch softball that you use? What were some of the ones that, just put a smile on your face and you're like, man, that was a legendary bat?
Yeah. Well, that original double wall in '93, absolutely. I mean, because that bat was just a lot of fun to hit with. I mean, it was like giving a golfer an oversized driver or a tennis player an oversized racket. You didn't have to be as perfect in where you struck the ball, and you got, performance that was like you were hitting the sweet spot every time. So that was fun. I fast forwarded to some of our early two-piece designs. Those were fun to hit because it just gave you a different feel, and we start playing around with handle stiffness ranges that were in 500 pounds per square inch. That's pretty low. That's when you put a bat on the ground. It's we call the calibrated foot test around here. tongue in cheek. You can kind of put a bat on the ground and just step on the connected area for a two-piece, and you kind of like a gas pedal. You can push on it, and you can get a little or a lot, a flex, just depending on the design. Well, some of those early bats we made, I mean, they would just touch the ground. I mean, there was a lot of flex in those things. Those were fun to hit. The fly swatter, the juggernaut, some of those bats, they were a blast. And then, fast forward it to some of our current Nautilus bats. We're utilizing a technology we call continuous fiber. We're using a little longer fiber, which is stronger. We can use a little less material, which saves us some weight. A little weight, not a lot, but still any weight savings that we can, we get out of that barrel, we can put in different areas of the bats. So it allows for us to really kind of even develop and sell that weight and balance story even to another level. And recent years here, the last couple of years with our Nautilus line, just a kind of a assurance on our end that we're doing things well with that technology. The acceptance rate by the consumer has been huge. So big momentum swing for DeMarini on our 1.20 branded bats, or senior softball bats that are all utilizing that continuous fiber. So kind of in that order, give you about every 7 years, just putting something in there. Those will be the bats.
Yeah. I think the one that we glazed over was the flipper. That seems like that kind of goes under the radar as one of the more legendary bats from DeMarini. It had a good run for the last 5 years, and then obviously nothing's forever. It seems like kind of a new name to it, new technology with that continuous fiber. So that original flipper was pretty hot.
Yeah, it was a very good bat, and that was something that was necessary for those that played in areas where they're utilizing that low compression ball, and it just allowed for better impedance matches. Basically, the rate that a wall wants to come out of its deflected state and the rate that a ball wants to come out of its compressed state, you want there to be harmony there. If the wall is too stiff, the ball is soft, you're going to get a bigger footprint, the ball laying on the bat, which we describe as hitting a pair of socks, right? Those ball players. And if you've got so much deflection on the wall and the compression of the ball is stiff enough in some cases, it's a point of diminished return. You don't want walls for bats for any reason to be any thinner than what you can handle or what you should have as a player, because you have a large part in that outcome as well, just your physical ability. So those bigger, stronger guys that are going after bats that are super, super thin, in some cases, they're putting themselves in the rears as far as performance, because the ball's gone before the wall snaps forward and you lose that energy. So I like bats personally that are in the 250, 260 compression range. I know guys senior softball guys, they're convinced they got to have bats down in the 180, 170 range, and you just have to know where you are as a player. But it's important that you understand, where you are and what you're using. And in the case where the flipper, it was targeted for a particular ball type, and for most people that was perfect. You were always going to get wall deflection out of that outer wall, and there's actually an air gap in between the two walls. And if you're strong enough to get into that second wall, you'd get a little bit more performance. Good bat.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ultimate weapon, even though it's from day one what it was a double wall bat, and then fast forward today, it's a single wall bat. That's the longest 10-year DeMarini bat. That's been in the line forever now.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because originally our original double wall in '93 was the first 500 pieces we made were named Ultimate Weapon. Ultimate Weapon was our single wall line, and we call it the Ultimate Weapon 2. And when that bat got banned, we thought we would have a real problem with just people not being able to distinguish the single wall and the double wall version. We turned it into the Ultimate Distance. So that Ultimate Distance bat, it was something that absolutely. It was important for its time as far as technology. And then as we move forward into more recent years, that double wall design, just opening up the gap on our flipper, and now currently our nihilist, it's staying true to who we were 25 years ago, which is a multi-wall, gap wall, double wall, whatever you want to call it, design company.
And I think I asked you this last time, but we spoke, but I don't even think people could find that podcast / video, download it or whatever. And but now DeMarini, fast forward where we are today, 2020, obviously under normal circumstances, DeMarini does a great job with selling bats, selling all this stuff. And they it seems like custom has been born, that wave of custom. Do you think that's kind of what Ray DeMarini has envisioned for his company, DeMarini, like way back when, like I want to start doing custom bats? Is that kind of the path you think he's up there in heaven smiling down going like, well, yeah, it's DeMarini, it's custom bats?
Absolutely. No, Ray was really about catering to what the ball player wanted. And you're limited on how much you can do that from a design standpoint because there are rules that you need to adhere to. But in any area where we can improve upon that experience for the end user by way of our ability to create a bat specifically for them, he was all about that. And so graphics are huge for all of us. We all have our thing. It might be cars, it might be, bats, and the many other things that are out there that, that are, we have as hobbies. But in most cases, we are aware or we really care about how it looks, right? There are very few people that say, I don't care if the thing looks like garbage. If it works well, I'm going to use it. There are those that are out there that don't really care about, graphics or aesthetics, but that is not the norm. And so trying to, at another level, appeal to the customer with that, graphic experience and it actually being not everything that they want, but they can start to call out some of the features of the graphic packages with things that are appeal to them, put their name on a bat, put their number on a bat, put their, logo on a bat, and limited some of the logos we have on our site, but the color schemes that they can create to represent things that are important to them is huge for us. And Ray absolutely would love what we're doing with the business.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is going to be the toughest question, but I think you're geared up for it. They make a movie about Jerry Garnett's life. What actor is playing you?
That's Denzel Washington, baby, all day long.
You were prepared for it. I feel like you've done a lot of these, man.
No, I love that guy, man. I just love him. He's just cool. So no, all fun aside, I don't know, but yeah, I'll stick with that. I'll say Denzel.
And what bat are you using in a game? Like if you're playing this weekend and you got to use a bat, what are you going to? It's got to be in the DeMarini line now. What bat are you using today?
Absolutely, Bubba's my boy. Dale Brunghart, and love that guy. He's just a great kid. He's done a lot of great things for us in the brand, and he really understands what he wants in a bat. So he's instrumental in helping us set that bat up from a weight and balance feel standpoint and the design, the graphics. So that blue that he has on there is just outstanding, and that Nautilus end-load or performance load that we have for him, so about end-load end of the spectrum, is perfect for my swing type. So I use that even in senior softball games. I will use that, and then I'll use a couple of our senior bats. The Carter model has been one that I've used over the years. It's actually changed in its design, so it is a continuous fiber Nautilus platform this year, senior version, along with the Paul Sadler, Paul Stanley balanced, and then the Denny Crine end-load. So those three bats on the senior side, I've got one of each in my bag, and then I've got that Brunghart, the new one that's in the bag as well. So keeps me busy.
I'm more of a Mercy guy, so no judgment. All right.
ASA. So you're ASA out there, USA
yeah.
as they call it. Yeah,
yes,
Mercy's a great bat. It's a great bat. That bat originally was designed for the female athlete.
I know.
And it was on the bat, and we ran into problems putting specifically designed for women's softball on the bat. We had problems with the directors, tournament directors and league directors out there in the country not allowing men to use the bat because of that language that was on the bat. Kind of crazy, that they would take that position. But it's tough to fight those guys when they get something in their head. So it wasn't long after that we had to remove that from the bat. But yeah, our biggest group right out of the chute was a male player, even though we had marketed towards females.
Yeah, no, I know that year one, it was very obviously, color-wise, it was like pink and purple. And then year two, now you look at it, it's like it could adhere to anybody. So it's funny how things change, and you make a bat for a certain player and it ends up being, both players like it. So just funny how those things work out.
Yep.
Well, it was great talking to you, Jerry. I really appreciate you doing this, kind of going back in the time vault and playing Remember When.
Hey, Max, I really appreciate the opportunity to tell our story here, and you're doing a great job just kind of during this time when people are stuck in the house, right? They can't get on the field. So great job to you and your crew out there for putting together some things that are keeping us engaged in the sport. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. And if you're ever in the Northeast, right, we're in New Jersey. If you ever make it out here, stop in. I'd love to meet you face to face and shake your hand when time allows for that to happen. So
Absolutely, count on it. As soon as we can start getting back on planes and traveling as a company, I'll be up that way. So I'll get together with our reps and we'll make it a date.
all right, man. Sounds good. Stay safe.
You do the same. Thanks, Max.